Amazing Discoveries, where 1,000 poor peasants found comfort on their journeys. Exposed Secrets. Jack Thompson grasped the crumbling journal tightly, his fingers smudging the delicate ink as he flipped through fragile pages. His grandfather's elegant handwriting sang of resilience, of neighbors lifting each other during the harshest winters, and of farmers banding together to cultivate more than just crops. They cultivated hope. Now, in a town where for sale signs littered once vibrant lawns, Jack's heart ached at the thought of his children growing up surrounded by despair. Each line pulled at a thread of longing in him, igniting a flicker of determination dimmed by the weight of uncertainty. In the dim light of the attic, dust motes swirling around him, Jack's breath quickened as he thought about sharing his grandfather's stories. The idea of reviving their town's spirit, a bold grassroots initiative, gripped him. Yet, alongside that enthusiasm crept a nagging doubt. The weight of his family's financial struggles pressed down harder. What if his efforts were in vain? What if the endless hours spent rallying others meant neglecting his own family's needs? Each thought jammed his mind, racing to a point of tension that felt unbearable. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But then late-night whispers of a wealthy developer reached his ears, the tension in Jack's chest tightening like a vice. The rumor was the storm before the calm, a danger to everything he held dear. Gentrification threatened to strip away their history, suffocating dreams beneath piles of freshly rolled sod and cookie-cutter homes. This looming figure of greed tarnished every small triumph, stoked his anxiety. With every story he shared with neighbors, he faced voices that wanted to believe but recoiled in fear, the sting of defeat dancing on their lips. What if he lost this battle? The thought ignited a spark of desperation. Torn between his children's future and the memories harbored in every corner of their home, he paced back and forth. Should he plunge deeper into this crusade or retreat to safety, shielding his little ones from potential heartache? As he lingered in the community center, a place thick with the ghosts of togetherness, voices blurred into a haunting echo of what could be lost. Yet, there, amid fragmented laughter and solemn stories, hope flickered back to life. Jack felt that familiar weight, a duality of dread and determination building within him. The palpable anxiety clawed at his throat, but he rallied in moments of clarity when he recognized the profound human connection binding them. But reality crashed in hard when an unexpected encounter with the developer turned hopeful resolve into aching doubt. With each arrogant word spoken, Jack's world began to tilt, a web of deceit he hadn't seen skimming just beneath the surface of the conversation tightened around him. Did the man truly care about redefining their town, or was he after merely its monetary worth? Jack had to choose, and every second spent in indecision threatened to shatter what he loved most. In that critical moment, standing at the edge of despair, Jack's heart raced. The struggle for justice and the safety of his family swirled in chaotic conflict. Would he rise to challenge the invasive forces, or would fear force him to turn back toward the history he clung to so tightly? The answer lay shrouded in the uncertainty that left him on the brink of action, poised and ready to face a choice that threatened to change everything. Jack couldn't shake the foreboding sense that everything was unraveling faster than he could grasp. That conversation with the developer replayed relentlessly in his mind, each word a dagger, each smirk a reminder of the stakes. He needed clarity, a path illuminated by conviction instead of fear. As he stepped out of the suffocating attic air into the crisp evening, Jack let the cool breeze wash over him, urging him to think, to plan, to fight. Engulfed in a world that felt both familiar and foreign, he lingered in the street, the very sidewalks painted with memories of childhood plays and laughter now feeling heavy with impending change. He remembered when similar roads that branched throughout their town thrummed with vitality. Could the echoes of history weave their way into the present? Was it enough to simply hope, Or did he need to craft a tangible vision? Jack realized hope alone would not suffice. Strategy was crucial. He turned his focus inward, surveying the landscape of his fears. Each worry was a mountain shadowing his ambitions. Financial burdens loomed larger than ever, but the thought of losing the community his family had called home for generations ignited something primal within him. This was about more than money. It was about legacy, identity. He had the journal clutched against his heart, a testament to his heritage and resilience that could serve as a guiding light. With each step homeward, Jack decided he needed to couple his passion with actionable steps. He envisioned gatherings where townsfolk could share their stories, their hopes, their battles, their defiance against the looming threat of development. Perhaps if he could bind them through their shared history, inspire them to reclaim their narrative, they could fight back together. That very night, he pored over the aged pages of his grandfather's journal, dissecting every detail of the past. Jack felt a rush of urgency as he penned his own plan, a rallying cry infused with a rich tapestry of their history. This wouldn't be a mere campaign, it would be a movement. He'd articulate their story, juxtaposing it with the encroaching darkness. The developer's machinery might bulldoze buildings, but it couldn't erase the spirit of the town that lived in every resident's heart. However, doubt sneaked back in, curling around his spine like a vine. What made him the one to lead this charge? Jack had spent years worrying about making ends meet, unraveling under the weight of his own doubts rather than lifting others. Yet, amidst the swirl of uncertainty, he discovered a glimmer of resolve. His grandfather had fought his own battles. Perhaps it was time he embraced the courage that had coursed through his family's veins. In the days that followed, Jack began reaching out. He gathered snippets of hope from those who still believed in their home, crafting his message with care. He felt invigorated, sharing snippets of his vision with friends and neighbors. Their reactions varied, but the few who nodded in agreement whetted his appetite for more. This was more than personal growth. It was about harnessing the raw potential of a community that had been silenced for far too long. Yet, as he ignited passion within, shadows lurked around every corner. The developer's next steps loomed ominously, and Jack knew a confrontation was drawing near. Would his newfound resolve withstand scrutiny, or would the whispers of doubt resurface, sowing discord in his plans? The seeds of conflict and unpredictability planted in Jack's heart compelled him to face the inevitable. The groundwork had been laid, and now, the moment was ripe for revelation. The time was approaching to not only share his vision but to directly confront the embodiment of his fears. With the journal tucked securely beneath his arm, Jack steeled himself for what was about to come. The truth would either ignite the spark of revolution or extinguish the flame he had kindled. And as the phone suddenly buzzed with a message from his anxious neighbor about an upcoming town hall meeting to discuss the development, he wondered. Was he ready to break down the walls of fear, or would he let them close in on him? The town hall meeting loomed like a storm cloud, heavy with expectation. Jack's heart raced as he navigated through the streets that now felt like a labyrinth of memories, each turn bringing him closer to the pivotal moment that could define his future. The air grew thick with tension as he arrived, the building's facade looming before him, its once welcoming aura now seemingly transformed into a fortress. People filed in, faces a mix of apprehension and determination. Jack could sense their struggles, their very stories intersecting with his own. As he took a seat, Jack's mind buzzed with thoughts, each one a blend of anxiety and resolve. What if he faltered? What would happen if he stood before them and crumbled under the weight of his own insecurities? Yet, he couldn't let doubt overshadow the urgency he felt. It wasn't just about defending a piece of land. It was about defending a legacy. He fidgeted with the journal, clinging to the pages lined with resilience and wisdom passed down through generations. The meeting commenced, voices rising and falling with fervor. Jack listened, tracking the threads of fear and frustration woven through discussions. Complaints about the developer's tactics unfurled like petals, and a collective indignation filled the room. The atmosphere crackled with possibility, yet every cheer was accompanied by his gnawing apprehension. What if his voice didn't resonate? What if he was just another voice drowning in the swell of panic? Finally, the moment arrived. The floor was opened for community input, and Jack forced himself to rise. As he stepped into the light, the weight of expectation bore down on him. His breath quickened, and he realized that this was not just about words. It was a declaration of intent. With each step to the front, his mind spiraled with a chaotic blend of doubt and adrenaline. "Thank you for being here," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "We are facing a threat that goes beyond our homes. This is about who we are, our history, our familial roots embedded in this soil." He felt the eyes of his neighbors locked onto him, their collective consciousness merging into one wave of hope. Inspiration surged through him, intermingling with fear, morphing into a powerful essence he had not anticipated. Jack shared snippets from his grandfather's journal, intertwining anecdotes of struggle and perseverance. His words ignited an ember of connection. He wasn't just reciting their shared history. He was embodying it. The imagery he crafted painted a vivid picture of resilience that resonated deep within the crowd. He saw heads nodding, murmurs of agreement circulating, and for the first time, Jack recognized the potential he had always overlooked. He wasn't just a spectator in this narrative. He was a player, an architect of a collective future. Yet, as he spoke, a flicker of uncertainty danced in the corner of his mind. By standing at the forefront, was he placing himself in the crosshairs of criticism? What if his efforts faded, the passion he ignited as fleeting as the summer breeze? But the voices of his community rallied him on. Their energy wrapped around him like a protective barrier against skepticism. As he concluded, applause erupted, a cacophony of fervor and validation. Jack's heart soared, but he was acutely aware that this was merely the beginning. The seeds had been planted, but the fight was far from over. The developer's power loomed larger than individual voices, their plans shrouded in darkness. He stepped down, a resolute fire burning in his chest, but he was mindful of the stakes. Could collective fury translate into lasting change? Would the unity he sensed tonight persist when the fresh shock of their confrontation faded? Just as Jack returned to his seat, the developer's representative strode in, a smug look etching across his face. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd as the weight of reality settled in. Jack steeled himself this interaction could push him over the edge, or perhaps it would illuminate an undeniable path forward yet unseen. The moment had arrived to face the embodiment of his fears once again. Would he give in to the weight of his apprehensions or find in himself the strength to challenge the very force threatening their community? Jack's pulse raced as the representative strutted toward the front of the room, an embodiment of the looming threat. A taunting smile stretched across the man's face, as if he reveled in the unease he stirred. Jack swallowed hard, feeling the remnants of his earlier confidence fray at the edges. The man's presence mirrored the very doubts he struggled to quell, the specter of authority shrouded in arrogance, a constant reminder of Jack's humble beginnings. As the representative began speaking, his tone smooth and condescending, Jack fought against the paralysis creeping in. He struggled to absorb the smooth talking. It was a veneer hiding the corporate greed behind it. Each polished word echoed the fateful decisions made in boardrooms far removed from the reality of the town. Yet, rather than succumb to fear, Jack felt a spark ignite within him. This was no random encounter. It was a confrontation that could shape his resolve. Your efforts, while appreciated, lack the substance needed to combat real progress, the representative declared, dismissing the community's passion like a mere inconvenience. Rumbles of discontent stirred amongst the crowd, but Jack held his ground, sweat pooling at the nape of his neck. Progress shouldn't come at the expense of history, Jack challenged, his own voice cutting through the rhetoric. He could see the confusion flicker briefly across the representative's face. It wasn't just Jack's words. It was the fire ignited in him. He wasn't here merely to plead. He was here to assert his rightful place in the conversation. The representative smirked, unfazed. History won't pay the bills, young man. Your quaint notions of legacy won't protect your homes from real development. Those words pierced Jack, but embedded within them was a challenge he could no longer ignore. For the first time, Jack felt the tremors of possibility coursing through him. His grandfather's journal echoed in his mind, the tales of resilience and the fight against insurmountable odds. He realized this was not simply personal. It was emblematic of larger systemic issues threatening individual identities across many communities. As thoughts collided in his mind, the crowd's anxious murmurs coalesced around him, and Jack seized the moment. Is development worth sacrificing our identity? At what point do we lose more than we gain? He felt weighty eyes shift toward him, lending strength. In elevating the question, Jack was no longer just a voice. He was leading a flicker of defiance. The representative's demeanor darkened, his mask slipping to reveal irritation. You don't understand the complexities of our projects. No, Jack interrupted. It's you who don't understand the importance of what you're trying to take from us. His words rang out, rippling through the crowd. The collective tension transformed, morphing uncertainty into a hesitant sense of unity. He was leveraging not just his voice, but their shared sorrow at the possibility of loss. As the tension in the room thickened, Jack felt the pulse of determination beneath his skin solidify into resolve. Standing before the embodiment of his fear and frustration, he began to carve out a space for his own authority. Each word became more powerful, each gesture more deliberate. This wasn't just about the land, it was about standing firm in the face of erasure. Yet, with the newfound courage came a dawning realization. He had traversed a significant boundary that would not easily revert back. He was no longer just the anxious man clinging to a journal. He was a voice capable of influencing the tides of change, and it came with challenges he hadn't anticipated. And as the developer's representative struggled to counter Jack's growing momentum, a question gnawed at Jack's insides. How far was he willing to go, and what cost would it demand from him? The moment unfolded into something larger than he had imagined. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The choices lay heavy before him. Either retreat back to the shadows of uncertainty or continue to step into the light, asserting his place as a defender of legacy. With a firm grip on the journal, he understood that overcoming this challenge meant wisdom, gained from past struggles, would need to guide his next move. The sense of impending clarity was juxtaposed with the uncertainty of the fight ahead, leaving Jack to navigate the murky waters that lay between defiance and vulnerability. The finale approached as the representative glared at Jack, summoning a hollowness of stakes too high to ignore. Would Jack move to dismantle the facade of authority entirely, or learn to manipulate it to his advantage? The answer awaited, heavy in the charged air of this fraught encounter. Jack could feel a shift, a stirring of something greater than his own personal struggle. The weight of the representative's scorn hung heavily in the air, yet he found a tethering strength in the collective murmurs of the crowd. They were waiting, and for the first time Jack realized they weren't just waiting for someone to take the lead, they were hungry for it. In that moment he understood. This wasn't merely about standing his ground against a corporate machine. It was about becoming a conduit for their shared fears, a beacon igniting their collective memories of struggle and sacrifice. With each breath, he inhaled the fraught energy, exhaling it back in fierce commitment. Let us not pretend our history is weightless, he proposed, rallying his thoughts toward a new clarity. Every brick laid, every tree planted in this town carries a story. We owe it to those stories to stand firm. Words poured from him, once a smattering of anxiety, now orchestrated with a burning fervor. A part of him questioned whether this was the same man captured within his grandfather's pages, the man who fought against the tide. As the representative staggered, visibly perturbed by Jack's rising audacity, Jack saw an opportunity spiraling before him, an opportunity not just to counter the threats but to assert a new narrative, one steeped in history yet strong enough to challenge the present. Tell me, sir, Jack pressed forward, undeterred. What will happen when the developers have their way? Will you return to erase our past? Will you sweep away those who forged a life here? He could sense the crowd responding, their conflicted emotions coaxing him into further daring. That's not progress, it's a betrayal. Jack's resolve fortified him, but a nagging worry tugged at the corners of his mind. What if leveraging their stories against authority sparked retribution? What if the confrontation he had chosen came at a devastating cost? His heart thudded, but as memories of his grandfather's resilience surged, he felt them bolster him. This fight was necessary. The representative straightened, a thin veneer of composure cracking at the edges. You have a lot of spirit, kid, but spirit won't keep the lights on. The world isn't a fable. It requires hard choices. What you call hard choices, I call false compromises. Jack snapped back, conviction hardening his resolve. Is it worth a price tag if it comes at our heritage? If even one person has to pay that price, it's too much. Silence hung heavily, punctuated only by the sounds of Jack's rhythmic breathing. With each heartbeat, he felt the weight of the moment, aware that something had shifted irrevocably in himself. He wasn't merely an anxious voice anymore. He was part of a growing movement, a voice sharpening against fear. As the representative sighed, folding his arms defensively, Jack calculated his next move. This was more than a management proposal. It was a pivotal choice, a test of his newfound authority against lingering uncertainty. Here was the tipping point, poised to either win back their history or risk it all in the name of change. The crowd wasn't just listening now. They were engaged, breathing in sync with his momentum. Seeing their determination reflected in his own, Jack realized the next step called for strategy. He couldn't just be the passionate challenger. He needed to be the clear-minded advocate with a plan. A plan not just to resist but to redefine what progress could look like. And as Jack formulated his strategy, something else clicked into place. Hidden under layers of fear, he discovered a capacity to persuade, to communicate. He was more than a mere reactant. He could become a catalyst for change if he structured his approach right. The thought electrified him. It ignited a fire not just to defend but to propose a robust defense rooted in the refinement of purpose and narrative. Yet doubt simmered beneath the surface. Would this newfound authority be viewed as a threat? What might arise when pushing harder against the status quo? With his grandfather's journal clenched tightly, Jack resolved to prepare. He wouldn't just step forward. He would arm himself with knowledge, understanding, and clarity. The battle would demand more than courage alone. It would ask for something deeper. As Jack stepped back slightly, the representative's gaze intensified, a silent acknowledgement of shifting tides. Jack could feel the rhythm of the room, the expectant pulse that rippled among the crowd, while the representative braced himself for a counterattack. This was merely the beginning, but Jack understood the implications of this fight could affect far more than just him. He would need every skill, every ounce of his growing authority. The stakes were higher than ever, and soon he would have to confront a deeper truth. The next phase loomed ahead. The representative's response would reveal his hand and potentially unearth hidden threats. Jack stood there, aware that this transformative confrontation would lead to either a voice of empowerment or a retreat into silence. What lay ahead was unknown, but one realization set in the time had come to face what it meant to lead, and Jack was ready to uncover those depths within himself, regardless of the cost. Jack felt a tension subtler yet more potent than the initial clash of words. The representative's smirk had evaporated, replaced by a mixture of annoyance and wariness, as if sensing the fragility of a fragile hierarchy beginning to shift. An array of new questions flickered through Jack's mind. Did the representative see him as a true threat, or merely a young man playing a dangerous game? With each second counting down, Jack analyzed the room. The looks exchanged among the crowd whispered of uncertainty, but also sparks of hope. What would he do with that energy? Could he harness it effectively? He focused his thoughts, teasing apart the details of his surroundings, how the sun slanted through the windows, casting stripes of light across the faces of the audience. Those shadows mirrored his own internal conflict, bright and inviting one moment, dark and encumbering the next. In that moment, he knew he needed a framework, a guiding structure for his argument that would resonate not just emotionally, but also logically. He took a deep breath, strategically recalibrating his approach. It wasn't enough to simply speak of betrayal. He needed a narrative that offered a path forward, a vision of reconciliation between heritage and progress. What if, instead of standing against change, we redefine what that change looks like? Jack proposed, modifying his tone to a more inclusive and collaborative cadence. What if we told the developers that preserving our heritage doesn't equate to standing still, but rather propelling us into a future where our history informs our growth? He watched as eyebrows rose, a physical manifestation of intrigue. He was leading them toward a synthesis of his earlier passion and this newfound clarity. We hold stories rich enough to not only coexist with development but thrive alongside it. Acknowledge our history and perhaps it becomes a cornerstone for innovation. Let us bridge the past and the future. The representative's brow furrowed, a fleeting flash of uncertainty crossing his face. Jack seized the moment, pressing forward. If we can present a united front, if we can outline a clear proposal that reveals our commitment to preservation alongside progress, who could refuse us? The confidence swelling within him began to banish remnants of doubt, giving birth to an exhilarating prospect. He thought of his grandfather, his courage, his unwavering stance against oppressive forces. Jack's voice grew steadier, tapping into that ancestral strength. The fire within him roared louder, demanding action, strategy, and direction. But deep down, an insidious voice whispered reminders of potential failure. What if their dreams were rejected? What if the representative countered with a plan so formidable it snuffed their aspirations in an instant? His resolve hardened. This was not merely about surviving an encounter. It was about awakening a dormant spirit within himself, a reformation rooted in the stories of those who came before him. He would not shy away from risk, not this time. I propose that we form a committee, Jack declared, gesturing broadly to include his listeners as his voice gained momentum. We need voices from our neighborhoods, from our elders, from the artists and laborers. Everyone deserves a say in our future. And together, we'll draft our vision that pays homage to our past while embracing the possibilities ahead. Let us manifest a community-driven approach, one that serves to blend our history with modern development. The murmurings began to bubble into a tangible current of agreement rippling through the crowd. Jack felt the unity flowing, a collective heartbeat underlining their shared desire for ownership over their destiny. Yet as palpable as the momentum felt in that moment, he knew it was merely the first chapter of a larger narrative. Even if they gained traction, the representative would not concede easily. The looming question remained, would those who held the power genuinely listen to the voices of people like him? Jack's pulse quickened as he contemplated the inevitable fallout. If they succeeded in mobilizing the community's voice, it would invite retaliation, challenge the status quo. How far was he ready to push? What sacrifices could he stomach? In the stillness that enveloped him, with excitement and apprehension swirling, he realized this wasn't a singular act of rebellion. This was the shape of leadership demanding heroism and vulnerability meshed into a cohesive force. As the representative opened his mouth to respond, Jack felt the weight of the moment thrum through him. This next exchange would shift the ground beneath them all. The tides were rising, but would they turn in favor of hope or despair? The crossroads were upon them, and Jack stared into the uncertain future, ready to confront whatever awaited him in the depths of leadership. The representative's voice cut through the hushed anticipation that enveloped the space. A practiced calmness masked his growing irritation. A committee, you say? And you believe that this amalgamation of perspectives will shift the mind of those who are set on progress as they define it? Each word was laced with skepticism, yet Jack could detect an undercurrent of concern in the representative's demeanor. Jack felt the mounting pressure to defend his proposal. This was more than just rhetoric. It was a pivotal moment. He had ignited something in the crowd that could not be extinguished easily, but that spark depended on his ability to navigate through this confrontation. Yes, he affirmed, maintaining eye contact as the representative leaned in. But we need to redefine progress together. It can be inclusive, and there's strength in diversity of thought. The audience shifted closer as if instinctively aware that his response was no longer just an intellectual exercise. It had become a test of Jack's resolve. He fought to quell the tension rippling through his body, drawing strength from the people who stood behind him. Jack realized that he needed to step into his authority. This moment was about establishing credibility, not only for himself but for the collective vision that he proposed. He spoke with unwavering clarity. Give us a chance to demonstrate how historical integrity can fuel innovative ideas. We shouldn't fear change. We should embrace it with frameworks that honor our past. The representative's eyes narrowed slightly, a challenge reflecting back at Jack. This was a decisive moment. He could either retreat into the safer grounds of diplomacy or risk further antagonizing the opposition. Having witnessed tension before, thanks to his grandfather's struggles, Jack chose the latter. We're striving for a partnership with developers, not a blockade. Let us utilize our resources, our architectural treasures, to illustrate a path that respects our heritage while facilitating their ambitions. What if we held joint workshops to develop ideas? Jack noticed the audience nodding. They were beginning to visualize that possibility. He pressed on. Engagement won't dampen progress. It can ignite innovation. It never hurt a city to balance its roots with its ambitions. As he spoke, Jack felt a surge of agency bolstered by the fuel of his conviction. Yet, a wave of doubt washed over him. Was he articulating an opinion that could spiral into disarray? What if the very people he sought to involve turned critical at the last second, rejecting the inclusion he wished to promote? His heart pounded louder in protest. He shook off the doubts, forcing himself to focus on the energy of the crowd, which now welcomed his words like vibrant sparks. This isn't just strategy, Jack continued passionately. It's an opportunity to forge bonds and blend our experiences. How many more lives could we enrich by understanding our shared space and history? This can be a movement not just for our neighborhood, but for future generations who will walk these streets. He could feel a shift in perspective among his listeners. They were no longer passive observers but potential allies in his endeavor. They leaned forward, souls collective yet unique, eager to contribute. The representative's expression began to betray signs of defeat. Yet Jack knew that the battle was far from over. Let us call a meeting next week. Then we'll see if your committee can help craft a preliminary proposal that addresses both our concerns and your aspirations. The representative concluded, a curious blend of resignation and formality settling over him. As the crowd erupted in muted applause, Jack felt a swell in his spirit. He had ignited something profound. Yet still, he couldn't shake the unease twisting inside him. The looming possibility of failure remained like a dark cloud. What if their initial steps to collaboration were crushed by harsh realities once the initial excitement faded? Jack took a deep breath. The path ahead was littered with unpredictability. They had opened a door, but would they be able to walk through together? The representative seemed to sense Jack's hesitation, a sly smile creeping onto his face, as if he had foreseen the impending struggles yet to come. You may have won today, Jack, but remember change is risky. You might end up losing more than you bargained for. As the representative retreated to join his fellow allies, Jack's heart raced. The words hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. The time had come to face the intricacies of leadership, but would he be ready to confront the darker implications of his decisions? The week leading up to the meeting felt interminable, each day stretching into the next, filled with both anticipation and trepidation. Jack found himself restless, pacing his small apartment as if the very walls constricted around him. His mind played a relentless loop of the representative's parting words, a warning that reverberated through his subconscious. He had convinced the crowd, yes, but at what cost? Could he live with the possibility that his efforts might lead to futility? The weight of leadership felt heavier than ever, pressing down on every decision he needed to make. He sought guidance from his mentor, a retired urban planner named Sylvia, whose wisdom had often steered him through turbulent waters. Jack, remember, Sylvia advised during their morning coffee. Her voice steady yet potent. The greatest leaders embrace uncertainty. It's in those moments of vulnerability that real connections are forged. You're in uncharted territory, but you've already sparked something important. Her words resonated, but the nagging discomfort lingered. In the midst of their conversation, he realized he had to delve deeper into his own motivations. What was driving him to pursue this proposal? Was it ambition or something more profound? That night, Jack reflected on his upbringing. his grandfather's dreams woven into the fabric of his own aspirations. The stories Jack had heard about resilience in the face of adversity whispered in his mind. His grandfather fought against the tide of development that threatened to erase their community and its history. Understanding that legacy sparked a resolve within him he had yet to fully recognize. He felt a surge of energy. This wasn't merely a project. It was a continuation of a fight for identity. As the sun rose on the day of the meeting, Jack felt a shift in newfound clarity. He spent the morning brainstorming proposals for how to present the committee's vision in a way that highlighted the very strengths of their community. He combined tangible benefits of historical preservation with viable paths for development, crafting a narrative that underscored their shared destiny. When the time came and he stepped into the conference room, he was no longer just Jack. He was a vessel of hope and determination. Purpose ignited within him, molding his approach as he prepared to present their ideas. Yet, as he opened his mouth to speak, a familiar shadow of doubt flickered through his consciousness. What if all this effort fell on deaf ears? Doubt whispered perniciously that progress thrived on revenue, not on history. The representative was an embodiment of those who prioritized profits over preservation, a specter of the very opposition he sought to surmount. Jack anchored himself in the resolve he had nurtured over the past days. "We stand at a crossroads today," he declared. "What defines progress isn't solely material gain. It is the legacy we wish to leave behind. Our city's strengths lie not just in its buildings but in the stories that permeate them." As he held the eyes of each committee member, he could sense their curiosity. Echoing Sylvia's wisdom, he leaned on his vulnerability, relinquishing the perfect facade that often accompanies power upon leaders. "I cannot promise this will be easy, nor will everyone agree. Yet, the value in realizing our unified vision can break through the noise of objections." To his surprise, he noticed a ripple of empathy in their expressions, a shift triggered by his authenticity. Jack began to weave personal anecdotes into his presentation, illustrating how many in the community had been directly shaped by their environment, creating a tapestry of familiar faces suffused with history. But just as momentum seemed to build, the representative spoke, cutting through the budding hope. "You're an idealist, Jack. But the reality is, change requires capital, and you risk alienating those who can bring forward that investment." For a moment, Jack wrestled with his response. Should he defend his vision, or concede to practicality? The path back towards dialogue felt tantalizingly close yet fraught with potential pitfalls. The air thickened. The stakes felt alarmingly high. Jack understood that this was a defining moment that could either consolidate their efforts or send them spiraling into disarray. He stood at the precipice of his own evolution, prepared to confront the stark realities of his ideals. "Maybe I am an idealist," he began, tapping into the vulnerability he had embraced. "But this vision represents not just me, but everyone whose story is intertwined with this city. If we pursue superficial gains, we may end up empty. We need both heart and practicality." As the atmosphere pulsed with unspoken tension, Jack's heart raced. Would they reject his invitation for a deeper dialogue? The words hung heavy in the air, teetering between fear and hope. At that moment, Jack grasped that real leadership required challenging the status quo, not merely folding under its weight. As the representative frowned, shifting in his seat, Jack caught a glimpse not just of potential rejection, but also of opportunity, a chance to bridge the chasm. What if this confrontation could lead to a breakthrough? The reflection forged in uncertainty felt more powerful than he had anticipated, testing his resolve and shaping his development in ways he had yet to discover. As the committee deliberated in silence, Jack's gaze swept the room, and with each fleeting moment, he felt the tide shift ever so slightly. Would his idealism reign supreme, or would it lead to his undoing? The tension in the room tightened like a noose, suffocating and palpable. Jack's heart thundered in his chest, each beat punctuating the heavy silence. He had made the case for both heart and practicality, but now he felt acutely aware of the precariousness of his position. While their stony expressions offered little solace, a flicker of hope lit in his core. Maybe this was the catalyst for a more profound discourse. As the committee members whispered among themselves, Jack wrestled with an internal dichotomy. He had laid out the stark realities of his vision. Could he truly convince others to share his passion for the past while navigating the often harsh landscape of present-day pragmatism? Did he possess the linguistic prowess it would take to forge an emotional connection with those fixated on profitability? His mind raced through potential answers, dissecting each moment of doubt. What would his grandfather do? Facing adversity, he had always chosen to confront problems with a deep-seated resolve, emphasizing cultural integrity over fleeting benefits. Jack understood this philosophy was now his responsibility to uphold. But did that make him a crusader or just a fool? A committee member at the far end of the table, a sharp-eyed woman named Angela, broke the silence. Jack, your vision is admirable, but how do you propose we financially support your ideals? Her tone wasn't cold. It was probing, as if she genuinely wanted to understand. Feeling the walls close in, he shifted. By creating a fund that draws on the significance of the proposed changes, partnering with local businesses who stand to gain from increased foot traffic and tourism generated by preserved sites, we can create a model that doesn't just rely on governmental support. His words hung in the air like a lifebuoy tossed to a drowning man. He felt more alive than ever. The idea pitting the ideal against the pragmatic resonated deeply within him. But with that elation came the dread of potential rejection. Would they appreciate the risks involved? Or would they see it as merely yet another half-baked proposal? What he didn't realize was that by engaging openly with them, he had transformed the situation. He had sparked a dialogue that was fueled by the same curiosity Jack had felt reflecting his own uncertainties. He was no longer just standing before them. He was in a partnership of sorts, wrestling with the uncomfortable truths of their shared reality. Jack, Angela continued, folding her arms, preservation is one thing, but incentivizing a discussion around further development can be a slippery slope. How do we manage the community's resentment toward potential developers? At that, Jack sensed the room's shifting energy. This wasn't just about him advocating for a vision. It was about facilitating a connection, a delicate dance towards a collaborative effort. He took a deep breath. We establish transparency, engage with community members directly, and invite developers to sit at the same table. Only then can we negotiate terms that honor both historical integrity and the evolution of our neighborhood. Yet, even as he spoke, doubts crept in. Was he really prepared for the kind of pushback that could arise from that transparency? The implications of those conversations could be messy, contentious, and he wasn't sure the community was ready for that exposure. A voice from the back spoke up, one Jack recognized as Tim, someone he knew for his vocal skepticism. You propose a collaboration, but what if it ends up being a spectacle that everyone gets to voice their concerns but ultimately, the dollars dictate the decisions? Jack grasped the intensity in Tim's words. The very roots of his fears found a voice. The prospect of having to navigate their grievances, to witness firsthand the friction that could lead to disunity worried him. He knew they were valid concerns, but if he didn't address them earnestly, the proposal would crumble. Then we need to ensure that any decision is made beyond the confines of the boardroom, Jack countered, determination rising in his chest. Real discussions happen at coffee shops, parks, and even living rooms. It has to resonate on a personal level, turned into action that respects our collective history and honor our future. Jack could sense the energy shifting again. Though he feared being met with the wave of skepticism, uncertainty draped over the decision-making like a heavy mist. But for the first time, he felt the possibility of collaboration strengthen his stance. It wasn't just about him and his ideals. It was about community survival and evolution worthy of both their past and future. He could feel them leaning in, listening more intently, and that made all the difference. As Jack opened his mouth to elaborate further, he noticed a flicker of understanding pass through Angela's eyes. Perhaps she was beginning to see the vision in shades beyond black and white. Then came the realization. This could be the breakthrough he had only dared to imagine. But as the committee deliberated once more, a pang of uncertainty in Jack's gut reflected an unsettling thought. Was the tide genuinely turning? Or was he merely clutching at straws? All at once, he found himself confronted by a decision. Was he ready to lead this charge into uncharted territory? What price would he ultimately have to pay to uphold his grandfather's legacy? And how far was he willing to push before that balance was lost? As silence fell over the group, Jack's heart raced anew. Each face glanced his way, and in that moment, he could feel the significance of his response weighing heavily on him. It was clearer than it had ever been. The next words he spoke could shift the momentum irrevocably. Would he stand firm, demanding the respect of their history, or would he allow the looming threat of discomfort to dictate his choices? The meeting had vastly evolved, but Jack felt the undercurrents of a monumental personal and professional challenge brewing. He would have to confront far more than just committee members. He was on the brink of a revelation about himself, and the journey had only just begun. Jack stood at the crossroads of his evolution, a palpable tension simmering in the air as the committee members processed his proposals. In the weeks following the town hall meeting, he had transformed himself from a man plagued by uncertainty into a voice advocating for collective memory and progress. Each planning session with the committee deepened his resolve, peeling back layers of self-doubt and revealing a tenacity he never knew he possessed. On the day of the impending vote, Jack felt an electric anticipation coursing through him. The sun spilled over the town square, illuminating the path he had chosen to tread, the stories that had been waiting to be told. As he arrived at the community center, the room buzzed with energy. Familiar faces of friends, neighbors, and even skeptics were gathered, the air crackling with hope and apprehension. This was it, the culmination of his efforts, the fight for their town's future, rested on the vote this evening. As he prepared to present their detailed proposal, Jack noticed the glances of acknowledgement exchanged among the attendees. They were no longer disparate voices. They had coalesced into a unified community, united around a vision that intertwined their past with a resilient future. The committee chair introduced Jack to a round of applause. With a firm stance and fervent demeanor, Jack stepped to the front, clutching his grandfather's journal, a symbol of legacy and personal connection. This time, however, he felt the weight of expectation transform into confident anticipation. Today marks a pivotal moment for our community, he began, his voice strong and clear. We are not just voting on a proposal. We are voting on the future that we want our children to inherit, a legacy that honors where we come from while welcoming the possibilities ahead. As he articulated their vision, historical preservation paired with thoughtful development, Jack felt the passion radiate through him, the very spirit of his ancestors animating his presence. The room was alive with energy. Every nod, every murmur, amplified his conviction. Jack proposed the establishment of an alliance with developers that focused on the fusion of heritage and progress, the preservation of significant sites complemented by innovative designs that invited community involvement. Yet, amidst the applause, he recognized the shadows of doubt lingering around the room. Standing in his growing confidence contrasted against the earlier fears whispered near the committee's edges. That sense of vulnerability gnawed at him, but instead of letting insecurity seep in, he embraced it, turning it into strength. None of this will happen without your voices, Jack declared, casting his gaze across the crowd. We must hold developers accountable for including our community's input. Change should not erase, it should enrich. As the time for the vote approached, the palpable tension of anticipation morphed into a wave of solidarity. Jack could feel it engaging with the very fabric of his community, echoing the resolve that had surged through him since he first picked up his grandfather's journal. This was bigger than him. It was a rebirth for the town he loved. When the final vote was called, Jack's heart beat fiercely against his ribcage as results were read. Each yes felt like a salve, each one a declaration of their collective values and dreams. And as the final tally revealed a unanimous decision in favor of his proposal, an explosion of cheers erupted that echoed in his ears. In that breathtaking moment, Jack recognized the transformation within himself, not merely as an advocate, but as a leader forged from the very courage reflected in the pages of that journal. The balance between ambition and history was more than a proposal. It was now a tangible reality rooted firmly in his hands. With tears glistening in his eyes, he turned to thank everyone in the room, speaking not only of gratitude, but with mutual respect for the journey they had undertaken together. Jack knew fear could have shackled him, yet he had decided to cling to his ideals, choosing action over hesitation. By standing firm in his commitment, he cultivated sincerity among his neighbors, a testament that they weren't just fighting for a plan. They were nurturing a legacy of resilience. In the days that followed, Jack tapped into newfound confidence, ready to engage with developers and secure community workshops designed to enact their plans. He transformed into an architect of not just change, but also of collaborative spirit, empowering others and fostering a sense of belonging that had previously seemed elusive. He had conquered doubt. He had forged connections that would ripple through the town for generations, blending the histories and aspirations of old and new. Jack was no longer a mere reflection of his past. He was its beacon for the future, embodying the triumphant legacy of his grandfather, a legacy that would flourish through the stories etched into every brick and corner of their community. In realizing the heights of his personal growth, Jack reveled in the achievement of collective empowerment. He knew the journey continued, but he had emerged resolutely, not just as a guardian of history, but as a harbinger of hope for a brighter future. This was the profound moment of triumph, the culmination of hard-fought battles and essential lessons learned. Standing there, amidst applause and joy, he felt utterly fulfilled. Jack Thompson had chosen to grow, to lead, and in doing so, had transformed both himself and the heart of his beloved community. Now, it's your turn to embrace that spirit of transformation. You need to subscribe now to this channel, so that you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and uplift you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the mission of sharing heartfelt narratives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Jack's journey. What resonates with you the most? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. The power of personal overcoming stories is real, and only true fans understand the urgency to champion this message.